She was humiliated at work, called invisible by the daughter of a billionaire who never imagined what hid behind that blue uniform. Isabella Ramos, a Brazilian immigrant in New York, cleaned offices to support her daughter, but no one knew she spoke 5 languages and carried a secret that could change the fate of the company that despised her. When crisis hit the Prescott empire, the woman everyone ignored became the only one who could save them. Subscribe to Fire Story, because here, every story proves that life always has a twist waiting. Some people are born believing the world spins around their whims, and Emily Prescott was one of them. The only daughter of billionaire Richard Prescott, owner of one of New York's largest tech companies, she strutted through the halls of the Prescott Group as if walking down an invisible red carpet. Her presence brought silence, not out of respect, but out of fear. Employees avoided her gaze, aware that even the smallest mistake could turn into a public humiliation. Emily had a cruel gift, turning kindness into weakness. And that day, her target was a woman who, without knowing, carried a secret that could change everything. The main office gleamed, smelling of disinfectant and expensive perfume. Isabella Ramos, the cleaning lady in charge, was finishing wiping the glass conference table when Emily walked in, speaking loudly on her phone. "Yes, Dad, I told you already. The reports will be ready. It's just that these slow people delay everything," she said, casting a disdainful glance at the woman kneeling on the floor. Isabella, wearing a light blue uniform, simply lowered her eyes. The billionaire's daughter sighed dramatically, pretending impatience. "You know, sometimes I think these cleaners don't even understand English." The comment sliced through the air like a sharp laugh. Isabella just took a deep breath. Silence was her armor. "Hey, you!" Emily pointed, smirking. "Can you hear me? Or should I draw it out for you?" A few co-workers snickered, hiding their laughter behind fake coughs. Humiliation had become a routine there. Isabella slowly lifted her gaze, not with arrogance, but with a calmness that unsettled everyone. It was the look of someone who's lived enough to know that pride is a house built on sand. Emily, unknowingly, felt challenged by that silence. "Oh, great. A mute cleaning lady. How convenient." Isabella picked up her bucket, discreetly wiped the corner of the table, and replied in a steady voice, "Not everything said out loud is what really matters, miss." That was enough to make the air feel heavy. The next few minutes dragged on. Isabella finished her work while Emily kept complaining about how simple people don't know how to behave in a corporate environment. No one dared to speak up. Everyone knew the heiress's temper: impulsive, sharp, and allergic to the word no. The Brazilian woman left the main floor without looking back, but inside, something was burning. The humiliation, though painful, reignited an old flame, a reminder of who she'd been before she put on that uniform. A past holding more wisdom than any framed degree on the Prescott office walls. Emily, meanwhile, went about her day as if nothing had happened. She talked loudly, gestured dramatically, sipped expensive coffee, and laughed at her own sarcasm. Little did she know, the universe was already drafting a lesson tailored just for her, one her father's money couldn't buy. The heiress's arrogance was her shield against reality, a way to hide the fear of never being good enough to inherit the family empire. But fate has a curious way of humbling pride. Sometimes, all it takes is a simple cleaning lady to teach what Harvard never could. At the end of the day, Isabella walked through the mirrored hallway, holding her bucket and worn cloth. As she passed, she heard laughter coming from the conference room. Emily's voice stood out. She was mocking someone's accent in an online video. The sound pierced Isabella's heart like a memory. She, too, once had a different accent, the accent of hope. Before leaving Brazil, she had dreamed of teaching languages, of building bridges between cultures. Now, she scrubbed the floors of those very bridges that others crossed without ever noticing the shine beneath their feet. Life seemed cruel, but Isabella believed that even humiliation carries a hidden purpose. That night, at home, Isabella turned on her small lamp and opened an old notebook. Between its yellowed pages were notes in 5 different languages. "I can't let this die," she whispered, as if speaking to her past. Her teenage daughter, Sophia, appeared in the doorway, eyes curious. "Mom, Why do you still study those words? Isabella smiled tiredly. Because one day, sweetheart, they might become the bridge that changes everything. Sophia didn't fully understand, but hugged her mother tightly. Isabella's secret remained there, between lines, dreams, and the quiet faith that even forgotten gifts have their appointed time to rise again. Meanwhile, Emily dined at a luxury restaurant in the Upper East Side, surrounded by equally superficial friends. You know, today one of the maids almost talked back to me. I thought I was in a movie, she laughed loudly. Everyone joined in. To her, humiliation was entertainment. To Isabella, it was silent fuel. But the city never sleeps, and New York has a curious way of crossing improbable paths. Somewhere between the glow of skyscrapers and the polished floors of the Prescott Group, the invisible thread of destiny began to tighten. In the following days, Isabella kept her routine, cleaning offices, emptying trash cans, watching the parade of suits. Invisible to rushing eyes, but present enough to overhear whispers about a looming crisis. A multi-million-dollar project with Chinese investors was in danger, and the main translator had fallen ill. Isabella listened quietly from the next room, each Mandarin word she understood echoing like a reminder of what she still could be. It was as if the universe whispered, "Your time is coming." That night, before locking the office door, Isabella looked up at the 10th floor window. Inside, Emily laughed, unaware of the storm about to hit. Soon, the billionaire's daughter would learn the greatest lesson of her life, taught by the very woman she had despised. Fate had already started writing the next chapter, and it would all begin with one simple meeting that would change everything. In a small studio apartment in Queens, Isabella's whole story seemed to fit inside a suitcase. She came from the countryside of Brazil, with a gentle accent and eyes that refused to give up. Her notebooks were filled with sounds, dreams, and urgency. On the walls, rent reminders and grocery lists in Portuguese and English. "Don't worry, sweetheart, we'll make it," she said, hiding the day's humiliation. Those who saw her with a mop and bucket never imagined the secret behind her words. Words that flowed like rivers: French, Italian, Mandarin, and English. And, of course, the language of longing, Portuguese, still warming her memory. Working as a cleaner was the price the city demanded for space. Unknowingly, many measured her by the shine of the floor, not the brilliance of her mind. The millionaire upstairs passed her without lifting his chin. Isabella smiled faintly, guarding her dignity like treasure. "Don't give up, Mom," Sophia whispered, notebook in hand. "I won't," Isabella answered, as the cold wind slipped through the crooked window. And the world seemed to say, "Hold on, the tide always turns for those who don't let go." Before boarding that plane, Isabella had been a linguistics student at a noisy federal university in Brazil. She studied phonetics, pragmatics, and the way the mouth shapes meaning. Accents fascinated her, not out of exoticism, but out of respect. In every variation, she saw an invisible map of feelings and stories. Her professor used to say, "You've got the ear of a watchmaker." She'd jot that down with cheap pens, as if preserving an ancient secret. She practiced Mandarin tones with worn-out headphones and stubborn patience. Repeated French phrases as if they were lines of music. Made Italian sound like an embrace and English like a bridge. But the hardest lesson wasn't in any book, it was hunger for opportunity. A low-paying job offer became a one-way ticket. 1 year, maybe 2, she promised herself at the airport. 1 year turned into 5, and her suitcase became home. The humiliation of starting over, she swallowed it quietly, chewing pride. And yet, without realizing, she trained courage every single morning. In the US, her shifts began before sunrise. She cleaned hallways at 6, staircases at 7, offices at 8. By noon, she rushed to take lunch to her daughter at school. In the afternoon, she chased extra hours like gathering scattered lights. At night, she studied sounds on free apps, lying on the couch. When sleep won, she recorded short verb lists on her phone. "Repeat after me, Mom," Sophia would tease, mimicking Italian. They laughed, chasing away humiliation with love and simple pasta. The secret stayed hidden behind the blue apron. Sometimes, Isabella translated building notes out of kindness. The manager would say, "Thanks," and move on, unaware she was talking to a polyglot. Her daily lesson was simple: don't lose tenderness amid the concrete. In New York, kindness pays rent too, just with delayed returns. She kept going, because persistence was her pocket-sized miracle. And every word she mastered felt like one more step upward. Isabella learned to take a deep breath whenever the elevator stopped on the 10th floor. There, suits passed by as if they owned the air. Once, a receptionist said, "She's nice, but limited." The phrase echoed in her mind like a revolving door insult. Limited? Who, me? She thought, clenching her fist in her pocket. The secret burned inside, begging to come out, but she chose silence. When the time is right, God opens the right window, her mother used to say. That memory was both lesson and shelter, a blanket against the winter. Billionaire Richard often crossed the lobby distracted, phone to his ear. "Close numbers, close deadlines," he said, unaware of the story hidden in a bucket. His daughter, Emily, collected glances like trophies of superiority. With each blink, an invisible ruler measured who was worthy and who wasn't. Isabella responded with flawless service, not out of servitude, but out of ethics. Ethics was her quiet luxury, worth more than any jewel. And one day, that kind of luxury would catch even blind eyes. On Sundays, the Brazilian church turned into a school of worlds. Isabella translated hymns for Sophia, just for the fun of rhymes. In the subway, she practiced Mandarin, reading signs on her phone. Sometimes she helped lost tourists in French in Times Square. An old Italian man from her neighborhood taught her slang with bakery humor. "Parole hanno peso," he'd say, holding a steaming espresso, "words carry weight." She wrote everything down, as if collecting reachable stars. Yesterday's humiliation melted away in the warmth of her soup. The secret grew stronger every time she dared to speak. The lesson was clear: talent just needs a stage. Without knowing, the whole city was rehearsing with her for a future encounter. An encounter where different voices would become the same bridge. Meanwhile, rent kept rising, and so did her courage. "It'll work out," she whispered, a mantra breathing with the house. And the clock seemed to agree, ticking in patient rhythm. At Prescott Group, she began to notice maps hidden in the executive speech. A rushed salesman swallowed syllables to sound confident. A manager inserted long pauses to sell authority. Emily sped up her words, trying to imitate her father's power. Isabella thought, a voice isn't about volume, it's about intention. "Excuse me," she'd say softly, maneuvering her cart through the hallway. And without realizing it, she practiced active listening, like in her old labs. One day, she overheard a few words: China, deadline, risk, cancellation. The word cancellation lit an alarm that wouldn't turn off. "They need translation," she murmured, gripping the bucket handle. The sting of being called invisible flickered in memory. Fuel, not pain. Her secret pulsed at her temples, begging to step into the light. "Not yet," she whispered, with the wisdom of someone who knows timing is power. The lesson echoed: the right entrance is worth more than the early one. That morning, the hallway felt longer, all glass and silence. When homesickness hit, she remembered her father fixing old radios. He used to say, "Every bit of noise hides a true frequency." Isabella adapted it for her new life. Every act of disdain hides fear. Emily's fear smelled like pressure and spotlights. "I don't hate you," Isabella thought. "I just refuse to accept humiliation." Her secret, after all, wasn't a weapon, it was a service waiting to be offered. To serve, for her, wasn't to bow, it was to build bridges. That was the lesson she carried across oceans in her suitcase. And without knowing, the Prescott family's future already depended on that bridge. The billionaire who dreamed of legacies would soon find out. Isabella straightened her uniform and slipped the notebook into her bag. She softly repeated Mandarin tones, tuning her courage. "Mom, you're amazing," said Sophia before falling asleep. She kissed her daughter's forehead and turned off the light. Outside, the skyscrapers breathed like whales at the surface. The following Tuesday, The air on the 10th floor was thick. Emails in all caps flew across screens like nervous meteors. "Official interpreter out sick," read the blunt notice. "Meeting with Chinese investors remains as scheduled," it added coldly. Emily paced back and forth, her heels hammering the marble floor. "Someone fix this," she snapped, not knowing where to turn. Richard urged calm, but the numbers demanded urgency. Isabella watched from a distance, hidden near the coffee station. The memory of humiliation returned, this time as wisdom: don't rush. Her secret now felt like a button ready to be pressed. The years whispered their final lesson: when you step in fully. She took a deep breath, mentally rehearsing greetings and technical terms. Ni hao, shexia, hazwa, deadlines, compliance, intellectual property. Outside, the city roared, indifferent to what was being born inside. Even time seemed to walk in high heels that day. Moments before the meeting, Isabella washed her hands and face. The mirror reflected dark circles and a stubborn glow. "Lord, if it's time, give me courage and humility." The word humiliation came to mind, but without poison, just memory. Her secret seemed to breathe with her, ready for voice. "I don't want to prove anything," she thought. "I just want to serve right." The final lesson answered: to serve right is also to do justice. She pinned her facility badge neatly over her chest. Unbeknownst to her, that badge would be remembered like a war medal. The billionaire passed her in the hall, not noticing. Emily argued on the phone, repeating "impossible" like a chorus. Isabella smiled faintly. Impossible is a terrible translator. The meeting room shimmered under cold lights, glasses aligned, tension thick. Between two languages stood an enormous silence, waiting for a bridge. She took 2 steps forward, and the floor seemed to agree. When the door closed, the only sound left was the hum of the air conditioner. The investors exchanged uneasy glances as the clock marked every second. "Let's begin," said Richard, in the tone of a man betting everything. Emily took a deep breath, staring at the screen filled with indecipherable characters. The interpreter's chair remained empty, like a silent accusation. "No translator, no deal," someone warned, cutting through the tension. Isabella placed her hand on the doorknob, feeling the cold metal. The memory of humiliation turned into wind at her back, gently pushing her forward. The secret within her lit up like a lighthouse in fog. The lesson she had carried for years took shape, firm steps on marble floors. Inside, a timid "ni hao" echoed from the screen and faded away. Richard lifted his chin. Emily lost her color for a split second. And then, from behind the door, a calm voice answered, in Mandarin. Dozens of eyes turned toward the sound, as if they had just witnessed a miracle. The next chapter began before anyone could ask permission. The clock read 9:42 when chaos began. On the 27th floor, the air inside the conference room felt thick, almost solid. Documents, contracts, and tablets were spread across the glass table, reflecting tense faces. Emily paced back and forth, her heels tapping nervously against the marble. "They won't understand a thing, Dad. We need to cancel," she shouted. Richard Prescott, the billionaire founder, kept a cold expression, though his pulse trembled. "We can't back out, Emily. A failure now would destroy their trust." The hired interpreter was hospitalized, and no one else spoke fluent Mandarin. Silence grew heavy, turning into collective humiliation. On the other side of the screen, the Chinese investors waited, stern and impatient. Their voices filled the room, sharp and fast, impossible to decode. Emily tried to smile, but shame burned beneath her skin. It was the first time she had felt the weight of not knowing what to say. Unnoticed, the woman she had once humiliated stood quietly by the door. And in that instant, destiny held its breath. From outside, Isabella gripped her microfiber cloth tightly, trying to hide her nerves. She could hear every word, every desperate tone coming from inside. The humiliation she'd suffered days earlier still echoed, but differently now. There was no more shame, only purpose. "If God put me here, it's for a reason," she thought, heart racing. The secret she had carried for years pounded like a drum in her chest. While Emily barked orders, Isabella quietly repeated Mandarin phrases to herself. Agreement, deadline, mutual trust, she translated mentally, effortlessly. The investors began muttering among themselves, frustrated. One mentioned loss of credibility and ending negotiations. Richard frowned, feeling the ground shift beneath his expensive shoes. Decades of empire began to tremble in silence. Isabella took a deep breath. The lesson born from years of silence was about to speak for her. What had been just cleaning work was about to become a bridge between worlds. Emily looked around, panic in her eyes. "Dad, tell me what to do." "They're getting up." Richard said nothing. His gaze stayed fixed on the monitor, silently begging for a miracle. The scraping of chairs was the warning sign of collapse. "Mr. Prescott," one of the assistants said, "they're disconnecting." Emily buried her face in her hands. "Oh my God, this is the end." And right at that moment, the door opened slowly. The soft creak sounded like a whisper cutting through a scream. Every head turned. There stood Isabella, in her blue uniform, holding a damp cloth. "Excuse me, Mr. Prescott." Her voice was calm but steady. "I can try." Emily blinked, stunned. "What? You?" "Yes, miss. I understand what they're saying." The entire room froze. For a moment, no one breathed. Richard raised his eyebrows. "You understand Mandarin?" Isabella nodded humbly. "And I can translate, if you'll allow me." Silence turned into judgment. Emily let out a short, nervous laugh. This must be a joke. But her voice betrayed her. It wasn't anger. It was fear. "Please, let me try," Isabella insisted, stepping forward. The billionaire exhaled. "Do we have anything to lose?" One of the investors spoke sharply through the screen. Isabella responded instantly, with flawless, crystal-clear fluency. Her tone was natural, respectful, precise. The investors' faces changed, first surprise, then attention, then respect. "She answered," Richard whispered, barely believing it. Emily stepped back, her body stiff, throat dry. Without knowing, the lesson life owed her had finally arrived. The words flowed like music. Isabella translated what seemed impossible, without glancing at a paper. Every technical term, every inflection, every pause, perfect. The investors glanced at one another, skeptical at first, then impressed. Richard watched in silence, trying to grasp what he was witnessing. The woman he'd seen cleaning his floors was, in truth, a brilliant polyglot. Emily stood frozen, her cheeks burning. Humiliation now belonged to her. But this time, it wasn't born of cruelty, but truth. Isabella's secret was finally breathing freely, in front of everyone. One of the Chinese businessmen smiled for the first time during the meeting. "Qing Jishu," he said, inviting her to continue. Isabella translated smoothly. "He asks to proceed, Mr. Prescott." Her steady voice filled the room. And what had been chaos became harmony. As Isabella translated, flashes of her past came rushing back, days of scrubbing floors, wiping tears, and swallowing humiliation. Every step she'd ever cleaned, every laugh she'd overheard behind closed doors, all of it now made sense. The pain had been the price of transformation. Her daughter had been right. "You're amazing, Mom." And in that moment, she truly felt that way. Emily stood frozen, her eyes unfocused. The lesson burned inside her like a slow fire. Richard watched everything, struggling to process the impossible. "Who is this woman?" he murmured, stunned. "My employee," one manager replied, equally shocked. "No," whispered Richard. "She's more than that." The meeting continued, now guided by Isabella's calm rhythm. Unknowingly, every word she spoke was rebuilding the company's reputation. Her secret had turned into salvation. The Prescott empire was breathing again. Outside, employees gathered near the door, whispering. Rumors spread quickly. "The cleaning lady is translating for the Chinese investors." "No way. Go see for yourself." Within minutes, curiosity turned to awe. They all listened quietly to the calm voice echoing down the hall. A voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. Emily looked at her father and whispered, "I didn't know." "Neither did I," Richard replied, with a faint, admiring smile. The old humiliation was dissolving into respect. Isabella translated another complex sentence without missing a beat. Richard straightened his suit and posture, suddenly aware. A person's worth could never fit on a badge. And this was only the beginning. As the hours passed, tension gave way to harmony. The Chinese investors discussed final details, satisfied and smiling. Richard watched Isabella as if seeing the world anew. Emily stood silently, heart pounding, ashamed not of the maid anymore, but of herself. The secret she'd ignored now shone at the center of the room. The lesson came in waves. The respect you deny others one day teaches you. The woman who had once scrubbed the floors was now paving the company's future. The billionaire realized he was witnessing a living story. "Isabella," he said softly, gratitude in his eyes. "Please continue." She nodded, translating the next sentence with surgical precision. The meeting was no longer just about business. It was about destiny. And destiny, when it arrives, doesn't knock. It simply speaks. The clock showed the meeting's end, but no one moved. The investors smiled and applauded politely. The contract was saved. Richard shook hands, relief flooding his face. Emily couldn't look away from Isabella. The humiliation she once inflicted had become a mirror, showing the woman she could have been. "Thank you," Emily whispered, barely audible. Isabella simply smiled. "You're welcome, miss." No pride, no resentment, just peace. The Chinese investors asked to take a photo with the teacher. Isabella's quiet laugh filled the room. The secret was revealed, and the lesson complete. But true recognition was still on its way. And it would come from the last person she expected. Outside, the New York wind pressed against the tall glass windows. Papers fluttered softly, as if applauding too. Emily leaned against the wall, trying to make sense of it all. She saved us," she murmured, her voice breaking. Richard said nothing, eyes on the golden skyline. In the reflection, he saw his own tired but humbled face. Maybe the most precious gems, he thought, are the ones no one looks at. Isabella quietly picked up the forgotten cloth from the table's corner. She didn't need to say a word. The lesson had already been given. No sermon, no drama. Richard took a deep breath and turned to his manager. "I want to speak with her afterward." Emily swallowed hard. The universe had restored the balance. And the next chapter would begin with an apology. For a few seconds, no one moved. The echo of Isabella's final Mandarin phrase still lingered in the air, as if her voice had engraved itself into the walls. The executives glanced at each other, still trying to grasp what had just happened. Richard remained still, pen hovering above the contract. Emily, pale, looked around as if waking from a dream. Isabella stood quietly, holding her folded cloth, badge crooked on her chest. "She really?" one director whispered. Richard nodded slowly, eyes still fixed on her. The silence that once meant humiliation now carried weight, respect. Thick, earned, undeniable. And without knowing it, that moment reshaped the company's invisible hierarchy. The Chinese chairman adjusted his glasses and smiled warmly. "You speak our language with soul," he said in admiration. Isabella translated her own words with a small smile. But Richard understood before she even spoke. The compliment spread through the room like sunlight. Emily blinked, stunned. "He praised her." "Yes," said Richard quietly, never looking away. The billionaire stood and extended his hand to Isabella. A simple gesture, but a historic one. "Thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. Isabella hesitated, then shook his hand gently. The touch was brief, but full of recognition. The lesson was given and received. Emily watched them, tears welling. The memory of her cruelty hit her like a wave, the mocking laugh, the cold glance, the word invisible dripping with poison. Now, facing the woman who had just saved her family's legacy, those words burned like coals. I didn't know," she whispered. Isabella looked back without anger. What had once been a burden was now a bridge. And on the other side waited compassion. "Not all brilliance is where people expect it, miss," she said gently. Emily looked away, fighting back tears. Life's lessons are rarely kind, but they are always fair. Richard noticed the silent exchange and, for the first time, saw his daughter not as an heiress, but as a child, still learning. He walked to the glass wall, the city glowing gold before him. New York looked different, softer, somehow. "You know, Isabella," he said without turning, "sometimes life places the right people in the right place, just when we've lost hope." She approached quietly. "I think hope never really disappears, Mr. Prescott," she said. "Sometimes it just waits in silence until it's called." He smiled faintly, tired but moved. The silence that followed was not of distance, but of reverence. Emily stood still, eyes wide, finally understanding what it meant to serve with dignity. The humiliation she'd once given returned as a lesson, not to punish her, but to free her. A Chinese assistant stepped forward, asking to record the moment. Cameras flashed, and Isabella, caught off guard, smiled shyly. The investors applauded, discreet, but sincere. "Is she the teacher?" one of them asked. "Yes," said Richard without hesitation. "The teacher destiny sent us." Emily lowered her head, feeling the weight of those words. Isabella translated the investors' gratitude gracefully. "They said they trust the company again," she explained. The news swept through the room like a gentle breeze. Richard exhaled deeply. The contract was saved. And inside him, a new conviction took root. True talent never depends on social status. Employees began gathering in the hallway, pretending not to stare. Isabella gathered her papers, adjusted her uniform, and spoke softly, "If you ever need me again, I'll be around." Richard smiled. "We will. And not just as an employee." Emily looked up, surprised. Her father continued, "I need someone who speaks the language of empathy and of business." Isabella gave a shy laugh. "I only did what was right. And that's exactly why I want you here," he said. The word "want" sounded different, not as an order, but as an invitation. Her secret, finally revealed, was now becoming her purpose. When the investors left, the room stayed wrapped in a warm silence. Emily approached, hesitant. "Isabella." Her voice cracked. The cleaning lady turned slowly. "I wanted to apologize," Emily said, trembling but sincere. "I was arrogant, cruel. You didn't deserve that." Isabella simply nodded, her gaze kind. "We all have something to learn, miss. The lesson is in recognizing it." Tears ran down Emily's face. "You taught me more today than years of college ever did." Isabella smiled gently. "Life is the best university, miss. It just charges high tuition." Their soft laughter sealed forgiveness. Richard watched from a distance, visibly moved. For a man used to billion-dollar negotiations, this was the most valuable one of his career, the negotiation of humanity. "Isabella," he called as she prepared to leave, "would you stay for dinner with us?" She turned, surprised. "Sir." "Please," he insisted. "I think my family has a lot to learn from you." The invitation fell like light on an old wound. Emily smiled shyly. "I'd love for you to stay." Isabella hesitated for a moment, then nodded. The old humiliation finally vanished, swept away by a fresh wind. Dinner was simple but symbolic. Quiet laughter, shared stories, dishes passed from hand to hand. Sophia, Isabella's daughter, had also been invited, and the table filled with a forgotten sweetness. Richard listened to the girl speak with enthusiasm and saw, in her eyes, the same courage as her mother's. "You're fluent in 5 languages?" he asked, impressed. "Almost 6, Isabella said with a laugh. Emily smiled warmly. "Teach me." "With pleasure." And at that moment, everyone understood. The greatest translation wasn't of languages, but of hearts. The lesson was complete, though destiny still had more to reveal. As night fell over Manhattan, Richard stood on the terrace, deep in thought, about his daughter's arrogance, Isabella's humility, and the chance they had almost lost. The city seemed quieter, the sky wider. "Not all millionaires hold the greatest treasures," he murmured. Behind him, Isabella and Sophia's laughter echoed softly. Emily leaned her head on her father's shoulder. "She changed everything, didn't she?" "Yes," he said. "And she doesn't even realize it." The cold wind swept across the terrace, carrying away the last trace of humiliation. The next dawn would bring more than a new day. It would bring a new beginning. The following morning, sunlight streamed through the Prescott Group's glass walls with a different kind of glow. Even the reflections seemed to know something had changed. In the hallways, employees whispered, smiling. "The president's calling everyone to the auditorium," they said. Emily walked calmly now. No makeup, no arrogance, just peace. She seemed like a different woman. Isabella arrived a few minutes later, her uniform spotless, her badge neatly pinned. She had no idea what awaited her. She only wanted to finish her shift. But the looks she received made it clear, this would not be an ordinary day. Richard stood on stage beside the HR director. When he saw her enter, he motioned for her to come closer. "Mr. Prescott?" she asked, confused. "Yes, Isabella. Today the company, and my heart, will do the talking." The murmurs faded. Once again, silence turned into expectation. "Yesterday," Richard began, voice steady, "this woman saved the name, the legacy, and the future of Prescott Group. She did it without asking for anything, without seeking applause, only with courage and integrity." The audience held its breath. Emily, seated in the front row, clasped her hands tightly, tears gathering. "For too long, we've confused job titles with value," Richard continued. "But today, in front of everyone, I acknowledge that true worth lives in one's essence." Isabella lowered her eyes, humbled. She turned the humiliation she once suffered into a lesson we'll never forget. A few employees began to applaud softly. "And that's why, as of today," Richard announced, "Isabella Ramos will no longer serve as our cleaning staff. She will become our new coordinator of international relations." The auditorium erupted in applause. Emily covered her mouth, crying with joy. Isabella stood still, tears shining, a modest smile on her lips. Her secret had completed its mission. Applause filled the air like warm rain washing away old pride. Some employees stood up, others wiped their eyes. "Say something, Isabella," someone shouted. She took a deep breath, adjusted the microphone, and looked out at the crowd. "I never imagined this. I just wanted to do my job right." Her trembling voice rang true, touching every heart in the room. "I've learned there's no such thing as a small job, only big hearts that give meaning to what they do." Emily now cried openly. Richard smiled, eyes glistening. "And if I can leave one lesson," Isabella continued, "it's this: never treat anyone as invisible, because in the silence of humble people, God hides his greatest miracles." The audience rose to their feet, applauding endlessly. It was more than recognition. It was redemption. And no one remained untouched. After the ceremony, Emily ran to her. "You changed everything, Isabella. You changed me." The Brazilian smiled, wiping a tear. "I didn't change you, Emily. I just held up the mirror life gave me." They embraced, a gesture that erased days of pain. "I want you to teach me," Emily said sincerely. "Teach you what?" Isabella asked, surprised. "To see the world the way you do." They laughed softly, like old friends reunited. Richard watched from afar, proud. Not for the company saved, but for the family restored. He understood then that the greatest fortunes aren't inherited. They're built through humility. For the first time in years, he felt peace. The lesson had been learned. The legacy was safe. And every heart in that room, lighter than ever. A few days later, Isabella arrived at the office without her blue uniform. She wore a simple, elegant suit, yet her gaze was the same, serene, grateful, strong. Employees greeted her with genuine respect. The cleaning lady had become a symbol of dignity and resilience. On her new desk sat a nameplate that read, Coordinator of International Relations, Isabella Ramos. She touched it gently, as if holding a piece of her own story. Sophia appeared at the door, smiling. "Can I come in, Mom?" "Of course, sweetheart. This room is ours." Emily entered next, carrying flowers. "For the woman who taught me more than all my books combined." Isabella thanked her, moved. Moments later, Richard walked in holding a folder. "We need someone who can speak to the world, Isabella. And that world begins today." She smiled, and understood that when life follows God's timing, it always gives back double. Outside, the New York skyline shimmered like a fulfilled promise. The sunset reflected golden across the glass windows as Isabella watched the light dance. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered, "for teaching me that a person's worth isn't defined by how others see them." Behind her, Sophia hugged Emily, both laughing. It was the living portrait of reconciliation. Richard stood quietly by the desk, deep in thought. He realized how many times pride had blinded him to the obvious. "Some jewels don't shine because they're covered in dust," he said, recalling an old Arabic saying. Emily smiled softly. "But they're still jewels." Isabella laughed. No words needed. Silence was enough. The same silence that had once been painful was now complete peace. Humiliation had become blessing. And the lesson, eternal. That evening, when Isabella returned home, she opened her old notebook. The notes in different languages were still there, faded by time. At the bottom of the page, she wrote a new line. "The gifts God gives us can never be erased, they only mature." Sophia rested her head on her mother's lap. "Are you still going to study, Mom?" "Yes, my love. Learning never ends." The clock ticked as always, but everything felt new. The secret that once felt heavy was now light, like gratitude itself. Outside, the moon reflected off the tall buildings. And somewhere in the world, another invisible woman might have been hearing this story, believing a little more in herself. Because Isabella's example no longer fit on a badge, it had become a seed carried by the wind. The following week, a newspaper headline read, "From Cleaner to Coordinator, the story that moved New York." The photo showed Isabella smiling, surrounded by her co-workers and the Prescott family. The article spoke of humility, talent, and faith. She didn't just save a company, it said. She restored the meaning of humanity within it. Messages began arriving from all over the world. People writing, "Thank you for reminding me not to give up." Isabella read each one with tearful eyes. "It wasn't me," she told her daughter. "It was God, showing that no one is too small for a miracle." When Richard saw the headline, he simply smiled and placed that page in a frame on his desk. Because sometimes, the stories worth keeping are the ones that start with a mop and end with purpose. And this one, without a doubt, would be remembered. Months later, Isabella stepped onto the stage of an international conference. She spoke about inclusion, respect, and invisible talent. The audience, full of executives, rose to their feet in applause. Emily and Richard sat in the front row, proud. "She was born for this," Richard said quietly. "No, Dad," Emily smiled. "She was reborn for this." Isabella looked at the crowd, smiling. She wasn't just speaking languages, she was speaking hope. "Treat people well," she said. "They're the foundation of what you call success." The audience stood again, applauding louder this time. The world was finally listening to the voice that had once been silenced. And as the stage lights dimmed, the light of her new beginning stayed bright. Humiliation was long gone, but the lesson, that became her legacy. That night, Isabella walked home under a gentle rain. The city slept, but her heart didn't. There was something new in the air, a peace beyond words. She leaned her umbrella against the wall and looked into the mirror. The woman reflected there was no longer a cleaner or a coordinator. She was a soul who had learned to turn pain into purpose. "Thank you, Lord," she whispered once more, smiling. And she closed her eyes, remembering that first day, that first mop, that first humiliation. None of it had been in vain. It had all been preparation. When the clock struck midnight, she understood. The greatest wealth a person can have is knowing who they are. And who she was now, no one could ever take away. Because the light was hers. And it illuminated the path for many others to follow. If this story touched your heart, like the video, subscribe to Fire Story, and tell us where you're watching from. Because stories like this deserve to be told and remembered.